People who fear saying, oh, well, I don't think I want to do that, or how long does it take? The answer is you drive how long it takes, because how open are you? How willing are you? How diligent are you willing to be in doing the difficult work? I always tell people, if you aren't willing to lean into this, don't open that door. Because whatever coping mechanisms you've built have worked for you, and they've left things closed off for you. Leave it there, because once you open this door, you can't close it. All it does is it increases the tension in that system, increases that internal friction of there's a part of me that's vulnerable and open, and there's a part of me that's not, and so now I'm kind of stuck between the two. So if you're not willing to lean in, don't do it.
Hey everyone, it's Tamara Thompson with Broadcast Your Authority. And I'm super excited for our next guest. We're going to have our co-host Andreas introduce her.
Leila Entezam is a leader in neuro-emotional intelligence, combining neuroscience, psychology, and peak performance. Her setup model for optimized decision-making is central for her consulting, coaching, and keynote presentations. Leila works with elite performers, including CEO, pro athletes, and celebrities, helping them unlock their full potential through a confidential, data-driven approach.
I love that. I'm all about data-driven. I don't know about you, but thank you so much for joining us today, Leila.
Thank you so much for having me. So excited.
Yay. Well, tell us, I'm curious about your backstory, about how you really got into this. I love data and that side, but, mastering like neuro-emotional intelligence and things like that. I'm always fascinated by this topic, but how did you really step into this space?
So, very indirect journey. I tell people I'm not really sure how I got here. I have an undergrad degree in neuroscience. I started out pre-med, and it was my introduction to neuroscience, and it has just been a nonstop passion in that field ever since. Mm-hmm. And then I switched gears and went to business and spent many years interim CEO of an organization, doing different projects. And then there was always something missing from that, and realizing that my deepest passion is in people. What drives human behavior? Why do we do what we do? How do you create sustainable change? And so I got another master's in psychology and became a licensed mental health therapist, not to practice clinically, but really to spend 3,000 hours immersed in human behavior and what creates that sustainable change. And then every one of those sort of became a stepping stone to the next thing that led to starting to coach executives and being able to put together those pieces of the neuroscience and the business, understanding the complexities of their world and the implications of their decision-making, and then also adding to it elements of data-driven, science-driven factors and behavioral understanding, and putting all that together to coaching high performers. So really don't know how I got there.
So if someone was literally like, what is, neuro-emotional intelligence, NEI? Because there are probably people on here that are watching this and they're like, I don't even know what that stands for. Can you share just a little bit more in depth, more about the topic itself?
Absolutely. So think of it as sort of breaking it out into pieces. So the neuro is the neuroscience. It's understanding the brain, the brain-driven parts of something. And emotional intelligence is understanding your self, so self-awareness and awareness of other people. And so neuro-emotional intelligence puts together understanding the brain, your self-awareness, your awareness of others, and all of that towards peak performance. And so that becomes very holistic in terms of your thoughts, your emotions, your somatic awareness. There's so much that goes into the decisions that we make. They're often so much more complex than we think that they are. And all day we are navigating through those choices inadvertently. Most of what you do is subconscious. Neuro-emotional intelligence allows you to put all of that together towards peak performance.
So one of the aspects you mentioned in terms of packaging those areas on the emotional intelligence, the neuro in the brain, etc., you're dealing with obviously very super powerful and successful people, CEOs, elite performance. How do you find going through that process with this group of people in taking them to the next level? What are some of the challenges in terms of that conversation and helping them where they're already pretty successful and they're clearly coming to you for some reason to get there? So is there any insights? Because it will give, hope to people that even those who are very successful still need this level of change in their life.
Great question. So what happens is a lot of times they are very good at what they do, and that is driven by a lot of cognitive, analytical thinking, strengths in that arena. But what got them to that point isn't necessarily what's going to get them to that next little bit of elevating their performance that they are looking for. That's where the things like the greater emotional awareness comes in, the attunement to your body sensations comes in, the comfort with your feelings and leaning into those, the things that they have challenges with. That's where some of those things come in. And so part of the trick becomes that, well, but to your point, I've got this far and I'm so good at what I do and I'm successful. But then that little piece of the other variables that you allow them to tap into gives them that elevation for those peak performers. That is that little piece that they're often missing.
You developed basically called the setup model for optimizing decision making. Can you share what setup stands for and how it helps those peak performers?
Yes. So if you go back to what we were just saying about how decision making is complex and there's so much that goes into that. So the setup, the S stands for your somatics. So sensations in your body are the way that your body communicates to you all the time. It's happening all the time. And so tuning into that somatic awareness. The E is for your emotions. The T is for your thoughts. The U is for what else is in your universe. Are you excited about a vacation? Are you on empty, running on empty, haven't eaten, sleep, things like that? And the P is for physiology, your blood pressure, your blood sugar, your genetic predispositions. All of that is showing up into the decisions that you're making all the time. And so setup gives you a quick way to take inventory of that. If you're triggered by someone, if you are needing to make a quick decision, and you're able to do a quick setup and take that assessment of where are you at in this moment.
Can you share an example of how that would work with somebody that you've worked with?
Absolutely. So if you think about a CEO that is triggered by a board member, and they walk into that board meeting and they're triggered by the board member and they think that it's just it's something about the board member. Maybe they think, it's something about the dynamic between themselves and the board member. And that it sort of stops there for them. And so they think it's something about me, the board member, and that's the end of the story. Setup allows them to take that further and say, okay, well, as I grow my self-awareness, I'm able to understand that, the person is triggering me not just because of the interpersonal dynamics that we have, but I'm able to understand that subconsciously they're triggering something deeper in my brain. Your brain is like a database, your entire lifetime of experiences. Maybe it's a trigger of a parent that was hypercritical or a teacher or a traumatic experience for you. So now you've added that element of understanding. And what emotions does that bring up for you? You've added that level of understanding. When you walked into that board meeting, and if we go back to the example of maybe you missed breakfast, had a poor night's sleep, you're excited about a vacation. Now that's what else is in your universe in this moment that you're triggered by this board member. Maybe your blood sugar is low. That's the physiological aspect. So you could have walked in and just been triggered by that board member and thought that, it's just something about the board member. But setup lets you take a much more comprehensive assessment by being able to say, what are all the things that are going into this interaction and this engagement in this moment that really are beyond the surface of just it's just the board member.
I'm sure people come to you and I'm sure many people, you see their blind spots right away. How do you step in and help them overcome those blind spots or obstacles that they might not necessarily see themselves?
Absolutely. So in particular with the high performers and level of people that I work with, they're at the top of the food chain and there aren't that many people that are either willing to give them feedback, they're intimidating, they're experts in their field, or even if they're willing to give them feedback, they are sometimes less receptive to receiving it. And so they don't have a lot of people that are going to give them feedback and that they're willing to receive. So they are at a greater position for having blind spots. And so we work together to help them say, okay, back to the brain as a database. Let's look at everything in your database and be able to identify where are those triggers for you, and then how do you tune into them? How do you use setup? How do you tune into your somatic awareness? How do you use all these things that are available to you as tools to be able to get a greater understanding of the blind spots? Where are they showing up? How quickly can you intercept them? And so really empower them towards greater performance.
I have to ask you something. So as a CEO myself, I believe that your coping mechanisms, potential trauma, things you have experienced in the past is the key driver for how you got to where you are right now. Have you seen the same? Have you seen a lot of CEOs having to change sort of their mindset on the things that have given them all the rewards in the past are now the things that are blocking them for the next step? Have you experienced that a lot?
Yes. So the things that got them here are often things like the resilience, the drive, pushing hard, leaving people in their wake, and that's absolutely wonderful. But then when you get to that higher level of leadership, when you get to that elite performance level, then it becomes about not just those drivers that got you there, but how do you then get that emotional awareness? How do you get that body attunement? And those are the things that a lot of times they've had to block out or tune out to get to where they are. And so now it's like you're introducing these new chapters to them that again, they a lot of times didn't want to look at. So you're having to bring down walls, do it in a safe way. Confidentiality is often a big driver for them. What happens is that their decisions are complex. And they sit in these positions where there's always eyes on them. Everything they do it matters, is judged, is criticized. They're expected to be strong and have everything together. And so they don't have a lot of places they can go where they can feel safe bringing down walls and being vulnerable. I can't tell you how many clients talk to me about their experiences, their addictions, their struggles, their trauma. And wanting to do that in a place where they feel safe and a trusted advisor, someone that understands the intricacies of high performers in the ways that they are different from a lot of other people.
So a person listening to this right now, they might feel, oh, that's a massive undertaking if I'm supposed to do that. What if the business goes south? What if I can't keep up with my current responsibilities? How long time does this process usually take for people? And why should they not ignore this, but actually lean in to their uncomfortableness?
So the first part of what you said, it's so common that, I don't want to touch emotions. I'm afraid I'm going to get stuck there. And so, the analogy I give is it's like if there's someone like a noise outside your house and you're not willing to go look, all you're doing is building an anxiety about your brain saying whatever's out there must be so big that we shouldn't go look at it. Well, then what do you think happens is that now all I think about is that thing that, and it doesn't, you think that it's not in your conscious awareness, but when most of what you do is subconscious, it's there anyway. It's driving things anyway. So you're better served unlocking that and seeing what's in there. And so that people who fear saying, oh, well, I don't think I want to do that, or how long does it take? The answer is you drive how long it takes, because how open are you? How willing are you? How diligent are you willing to be in doing the difficult work? They're very well versed in doing very difficult things if they're not emotional, and if they're not somatic, and if they're not some of those other things. And so it's getting them to lean into that discomfort in ways that they are typically not versed in doing.
So if they don't do it, have you worked with anyone who started the journey and then they just eject it? Or
I always tell people, listen, if you aren't willing to lean into this, don't open that door, because whatever coping mechanisms you've built have worked for you and they've left things closed off for you. Leave it there, because once you open this door, you can't close it. All it does is it increases the tension in that system, increases that internal friction of there's a part of me that's vulnerable and open and there's a part of me that's not. And so now I'm kind of stuck between the two. So if you're not willing to lean in, don't do it. So yeah.
So is that basically like part of your strategy when you're working with these individuals on the vulnerability part? Is it like, obviously you're listening to certain aspects of this, like he was saying, like you're telling them like, don't lean into it. So do you know automatically based on information if you're like, oh, maybe don't open that door? Do you encourage them not to open that door? Or do you encourage them to work with you in a specific way on the vulnerability piece?
The reason that's such a beautiful question is because I can't think of a time where I've had a client that came in open and saying, oh my God, I really want to look at my blind spots and, the stuff that hurts.
Yeah.
So the resistance is what I almost always experience. Mm-hmm. So they come in saying, literally, I don't want to do this, or the board made me do it, or this is garbage, but I guess I'll try it. But there's that innate something in them that's drawing them in to say, oh my God, these emotions I've kept locked away are dying to get out. And now that I'm at the peak of where I'm meant to be professionally, that stuff is getting a little more breathing room. And that emptiness that is driving them, that they're longing to understand, is what pulls them in to say, this is garbage, but I want to know. And this is ridiculous, but there's something that's got me here. And this is really hard. And this stuff is foo-foo. But man, I can't.
But they're aware.
Right.
Basically.
Something gets me to keep showing up.
Yeah.
So I'm very curious here. So for somebody like me who works with meditation and yoga, for me, bringing awareness to myself maybe starts with meditation. But in your kind of work, you are bringing awareness about an individual by talking to them, by realizing their data. So what are some of the basic steps one can understand in the setup model that one's, what can I expect if I'm coming to you? And what would be some initial exercises or questions or a session, a one-on-one session would look like, if you could share that?
Sure. So because it's one brain, one database, what you do your entire life shows up to what you do your entire life. And so when you are ordering Starbucks, when you are in the board meeting, when you are talking to your kids, your entire database is interacting with that moment. And your brain's number one job is survival. And your early years form a lot of those initial definitions. So we start by understanding your early years. What are the things that contributed to the definitions that you formed that you spent the rest of your life building on? And that is a lot of times a very big initial obstacle, because that's a lot of the stuff that people want to block out. That's a lot of the stuff that people don't want to talk about or look at, or they think, oh, that can't matter. What happened to me 30, 40, 50 years ago can't be important right now. And so it's overcoming a lot of those barriers and getting people to start leaning into some of those conversations. That's where our work starts.
Okay, so it's more like making them introduced to their identity again. Is it like reintroducing?
Love the way you said that.
Okay, I get that.
It's interesting how you mention the brain as data, because essentially we're having the human brain that is using data to connect the dots in terms of trying to look at there, which is a form of the brain of artificial intelligence in terms of that respect, but it's just doing naturally. I guess my question comes into is that as a society, and we see that in certain parts of the world where there is a viewpoint of having strength as the leader, never showing emotion, being so strong, not showing vulnerability. If you are that leader who definitely have had success, but the door has been opened, have you seen times when some of your clients have then got to an outcome that has said that this is not making me happy and this is not for me, and I need to take a different career path, or suddenly it's revealed things that they just had buried away? So has it changed the fact that I actually don't want to do this, I don't want to be the next elite, I actually want to take a different path? Have you seen a whole transformation of them just saying, I need a different life or a different career path? Have you seen some of those outcomes in your experience?
Let's see if this answers your question. So with high performers in the population that I work with, it's not a choice. That high performer it's something innate in them, whether they are playing table tennis, competing against themselves, conquering the next business deal. It's just this thing that happens in them that they can't stop. And so what we do try to work on together is saying, okay, what happens is a lot of times that innate driver in you creates this imbalance where that performance becomes everything. The success, the achievements become everything. And then you get to a point where you realize, but that's empty, but that's out of whack, but I'm missing something. And so we're saying, okay, now lean into those other elements and understand that not only is it safe to do so, but it's necessary for you to feel whole. And so if there is a shift, it's not necessarily a shift in what they do, it's a shift in the way that they do it that allows them to bring their whole self, and they have so many beautiful attributes to bring to the table. They sit in influential positions, their decisions that they make impact so many lives. They're able to do that so much more beautifully. Does that answer your question?
It does, yeah. Creating that symbiotic relationship so that they actually start to enjoy who they are as self to take it to the next level.
Right.
Which their families and the people around them, communities, hopefully, and employees benefit from that. Is that some ways in terms of trying to help them as well?
And understanding that, so many people talk about balance, but balance for them looks different, and that's okay. And so the language of supporting them is different. The things it takes to support them is different. Their brains work different. So it takes a unique understanding that through all of those years of the education, the experience, all the research, all of those things together have been able to contribute to me being in this sort of unique position to connect with them in the ways that resonate with them.
I have a very quick question for you. Do people come to you in a proactive manner or a reactive manner? What's the trigger point? So anyone listening to this that is on the fence, should I do this now or should I wait and see? What would you tell them?
A lot of times they're either mandated to come to me, again, like the board or a coach or something like that, or they come because not changing becomes greater than changing. So the internal friction gets to a point where it's something's got to give. That emptiness I feel, that, no matter where, what other coping mechanisms I use, they're just no longer serving me. And when they get to that point, that becomes all right, I got to find something. And I become one of the something options.
There's so much in depth in this. You have your book coming out. When this show actually launches, we're going to be promoting your book. What can people expect from this amazing? I'm already like, I need to just buy this and read this because I want to learn more about this as well. Share a little bit more about what to expect for your book coming out.
I'm so excited about this project. And the reason it's geared towards men is that was just the audience I've spent most of my experience with. Mm-hmm. And so it is taking the client after client, seeing that their stories were the same and saying, okay, well, I work with a very small group of people and I can only serve so many of them. It's very intense, the work that we do. And if there are this many, there's got to be more. And this book was a way for me to be able to take those research-backed methodologies, take all of that science, take the tools that I share with my clients and be able to try to share it with a greater audience from a perspective that is language that resonates with them, in a perspective that shows an understanding of the intricacies of the way that they work, and being able to try to allow them to feel more seen for their experience. And so it's a way to gain emotional mastery, understand why they do what they do, and optimize their decisions, with a particular focus also on their intimate relationships, because those become a sacred space for them that is highly influential in their lives. And so it's taking those tools and teaching them, but then also showing how they apply to their intimate spaces.
That's great. I love just promoting books and just talking about books in general. I'm more of an audio book person, but I'm just super grateful that you have created this tool and resource for men. You seem extremely knowledgeable, and I'm excited to actually get to know you even more after the show. For those that are watching this show, though, that are interested in connecting with you, and they're like, I think maybe I'm at this point. that I would love to speak with someone like yourself, how can they connect with you?
Thank you. So my website is the easiest way. It's workwithleila.com, Leila. There's an application process for the coaching. And if they complete the application process and there's a fit, then myself or someone from my team will reach out. And if there's a wait list, because I work with such a small group of people, then they get notified of that as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you flying out here, and I'm excited for your book launch.
Thank you.
And those of you that are watching, definitely connect with Leila. When her book comes out, we're going to put everything in the description below. We appreciate you always, and we'll see you in the next episode.